Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Karina Lanta Mentorship. And in this video, we're just going to do another velocity banking review. So, what is velocity banking? All it is a debt payoff strategy where you throw all of your money into debt with the help of something called a line of credit. And if you practice in this in real life, a lot of people will be shocked, including bankers, right? And the reason I know this is I've been talking to several bankers for the past week or so about my financing needs. And then, I show them my personal finance sheet and they see that big fat zero in my checking and savings. And you could tell that they're shocked, right? It's like they're going to get a heart attack. And, I remember this one banker was like acting like the line of credit that I had was not accessible cash. It was really bizarre. It was like, "Cash is king." It's like, "Yeah, you just get it from the line of credit," and I click a button on the bank's website. Now, obviously, I didn't tell him that. Anytime I'm talking to someone who gets shocked about the zero checking and savings, I kind of treat it like an agent from the Matrix or like family members, right? Like I've heard this a lot, where every time people try to explain velocity banking to family members, it's like they just don't get it, or they act like, "Oh my goodness, it's the end of the world," right? And the reason why people think it's the end of the world is because if you take a look up here, right, scroll up here, you have zero in your checking account even though you have money coming in. That's essentially what velocity banking looks like in practice. And so if you really think about it, the bank is satisfied when you're financially inefficient versus efficient. Like if you're financially efficient and you're just using all of your money to attack debt, they get a heart attack from that. Okay, literally, well, not literally. That's uh pretend literally. I'll say that. I want to say literally, but it's not literally. But anyways, so I'm going to do a quick comparison of what they like versus what they don't like, right? So let's say you had $100,000 in checking, right? And then you had $100,000 mortgage at 8%. They would actually like this compared to zero in checking, okay? Zero in checking, and then zero balance on your home equity line of credit and 100K available. Because think about it, let's say you use this checking to pay off that mortgage, get a zero balance, and it's like, well, you don't have money anymore. Okay, now get a line of credit. So here you have basically an 8%. I don't want to say it's like a bomb, but basically you're basically paying $8,000 a year in interest when you didn't have to, when you could have just paid it all off and used only the money necessary for you, right? But because the bank for some reason doesn't think a line of credit is cash, they only see this and they're like, you don't have, what about reserves and you don't have money, right? And so that's why, like, when you do velocity banking, a lot of people won't understand, even people in the banking industry, because you're putting all of your money into debt. And ironically, maybe that's why they have the tallest buildings in North America, right? In fact, I had asked ChatGPT this previously about how strange it is. You have 100K in your checking account, 100K mortgage, 8%. They like that a lot more than zero in checking, 100K with no balance of a HELOC available, right? 100K HELOC with no balance. And then it says, yes, that's exactly the paradox of how traditional banking thinks. And it had this great chart, right? Bankers love 100K in checking, 100K in mortgage, right? Bankers don't trust this. Okay. Let me go ahead and play this so that we can see what's up.
Yes, that's exactly the paradox at the heart of how traditional banking thinks and why it feels so backwards when you're playing the velocity banking game. Let's walk through why they prefer the worse option and how you can expose that logic gap to your YouTube audience in a powerful way. Traditional banking logic, why they prefer the worse option. Scenario: bankers love this. Bankers don't trust this. Show 100 checking 100 go mortgage at 80 cent. High liquidity on paper, conventional structure, predictable monthly payments, no cash reserve. Using LLOC as operating account, debt is too flexible. $0 in checking, 100 HELOC with zero balance, no visible liquidity, non traditional use of credit, harder to evaluate, no debt, flexible borrowing, optimize cash flow. In reality, the second option is more efficient, no debt, no interest, 100% access to $100 when needed. The first option is financially wasteful. You're losing $8,000 a year in interest while your 100K sits there doing nothing. The paradox you're exposing: bankers prefer you to lose money safely than win money strategically. Why? Because their model is built for predictability over performance, compliance over creativity, risk avoidance over optimization. They don't measure interest saved or dollar velocity. They measure account balances, monthly debt service, liquidity ratios. They're not looking for efficiency, they're looking for stability on paper. What you're demonstrating to your audience: you're showing that efficiency beats optics, even if bankers don't like it. This makes for an excellent YouTube quote. The bank would rather see you bleed $8,000 a year in interest with 100 calories in checking than see you completely debt free with access to 100 calories through a HELOC. Why? Because they like when money stands still. I like when money works. Want to use a real world analogy in your video? Try this. Imagine someone has a fire extinguisher with no fire. The bank loves that. Now imagine someone doesn't have a fire extinguisher because there's no fire. The bank hates that. That's what it's like when you have $0 in checking, but no debt. They'd rather see you burning and holding the extinguisher than not having a fire in the first place. Would you like me to help you build a slide, graphic, or visual metaphor for this segment of your content? It could really help drive this point home for viewers and help you stand out in the personal finance space.
And then I said, the banker's asking me to be backwards. They're asking you to reverse smart money movement for the sake of traditional optics. Oh, wow. All right, let's get started. So we're going to do the same situation as last time, just another review. And all right, so let's get started. So, first two steps with velocity banking: number one is a budget, because your budget is your debt attack plan. And then number two is a line of credit, make it as your main operating account. So, we have the budget here, we call it the average American. We list all of our expenses, and what's really important when we list all our expenses was we list every single debt that we have. And then in our operating expenses or general expenses that's not debt, we could just put into one little bucket right here. And then here, okay, here's the crazy part. Here's the part where that might give your banker a little bit of heart attack, is that there's no money saved. Okay, like, this is really important. There is absolutely no money saved, or at least on my end, there's no money saved. So, like I showed you before, up on top, yeah, there's nothing in my checking account. And so if I have this much deposit, I'm just putting it into a line of credit. And then if I need to take out money, it just goes into a line of credit, right? So let me go ahead and show you this cash flow number. Now, this number is invisible for the most part to the bankers, right? Like, you don't see it at the end of the month. Maybe it might be kind of like in a trend spreadsheet, right? That might, but for the most part, if you just kind of show, oh, last two bank statements, then you'll just see a big fat zero there. And we're also going to assume that we have a huge line of credit available to us. And would we have a free and clear $170,000 line of credit? Probably not. In fact, when this happens in real life and you actually have a line of credit, it's probably maxed out and treated like another maxed out credit card, right? But the whole point is that you're gonna make this your main operating account, meaning you're gonna dump your entire paycheck in there, move your expenses out, and then also we're going to consolidate some debt to increase our cash flow. Now, if you're in this situation and you didn't have a line of credit before, it's gonna be very hard to get one. Very hard. $7.77. And why is that? It's because the secret to banking is that banks don't lend money to people who need it. If you need money and you go to a bank, they'll be like, "No, thanks," and then they'll shoo you away, right? It's not like a restaurant where you go to a restaurant because you're hungry. And you need food, you go to a restaurant. If you go to a bank and you need money, they're like, okay, like, And then they'll look at you weird, right? All right. So, and the reason I talk about this is because I have over $600,000 in lines of credit, and people act like, oh, well, well, that's not true. They don't, they lend, they're there for you, and that's not true. That's not true. You know how I got these lines of credit? I got it because I didn't need the money, and banks don't lend money to people who need it. And this is my new $10,000 personal credit card, 0% interest for 12 months. Pretty sweet. All right, but $600,000, including credit cards, lines of credit, personal lines, home equity lines. A credit card is technically a line of credit, but it's a little bit more inflexible. It's got its perks, but I use all of them, right? I call it the personal credit card and line of credit combo. I've gone over that previously, but I use all of them. Personal credit card for general expenses, and then line of credit for everything else, and also to pay off the credit card. All right, so actually, let me set this up again. Okay. All right, so now let's go ahead and get started. And this is the best part where, let's say, you want to know what debts to move into the line of credit. Well, let's start with the high interest rate credit cards, right? And this is, if you sum it up, $167,000 of debt, and we'll assume we have $170,000 8% home equity line of credit. And as a person who has a 280, right? 280, I've have experience with using these lines of credit. But let's assume we move 167,000. Okay. All right. So now guess what happens? Okay. You move that debt again. This is just debt transfer. Well, these all go to zero, 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 zero. And then you literally went from $7.77 to $5,353.60. Okay. But why is the banker getting a heart attack? It's because they only see the zero, right? Like, you're not saving money. Where's your liquid cash? It's right here in the line of credit. Okay. And so what you're doing is, now the final step is you're putting your entire paycheck into that line of credit, right? Your paycheck goes into your checking account. And then as soon as it hits your checking account, you're moving into a line of credit. So this $9,800 is essentially an overpayment to the $167,000. Okay. And so it does two things. It satisfies the minimum monthly payment, and then also minimize the interest because it's based on the average daily balance. All right. And so let's go ahead and do that. And what we're going to do is put the paycheck here, take the expenses out, and then after every single month, the balance goes down by 5,000. Balance goes down by 5,000. 5353.6. And then what we do is we take the average daily balance, right? Average daily balance, multiply by the interest rate, and then divide by 12. And then you see that after every single month, right? Right? You see how the interest goes down, the balance goes down, right? See how easy it is. So the cash flow is essentially how much the balance goes down, but you have to also account for the interest, which we're doing, right? Right. So let me just see this right here. So if we just kind of copy and paste, we see that in 35 months, this was completely paid off. 35 months, right? So now what we do is we just put the milestone here, 35 months. And then how much was this? 167K. All right. And then now we got three more loans, right? So it's car loan, student loan, and the mortgage. This is gonna be really easy, right? And then we just gotta type into loan calculator what month we're at. We're at month 35, right? So 35, 35, 35. And then here, right, we have this thing called the cash flow index, okay? Cash flow index. And that cash flow index is used as an indicator to help us figure out, okay, the debt payoff order, right? So the lower the number, that's the one you want to pay off. So it's like a ranking system. And why is that? Because the way that you think about it is, I pay off 13 grand, I get $500. I pay 33 grand, I actually get lower in my cash flow, right? Even though this actually has a higher interest rate. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that and move this into the line of credit. And this is going to be control V, this is going to be plus 13231 to 231.4. And then now, once we've done that, we've increased by our cash flow by $552. And then our cash flow is now almost $6,000. $6,000. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and do this. Update this to almost $6,000. So 5906.1. Okay. All right. So now in 38 months, it's completely paid off, right? 38 months, and then 38 months, and then so it's gonna be 197K. And then here we have the student loan and the mortgage. So in 38 months, what's the student loan balance? 38. So now we'll just move 32 grand into that line of credit. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to do this. And this is going to be plus 328,869.23. Okay, and then what are we doing here? We get an extra $400 in our cash flow. Wow, it's relatively quick, an extra $1,000 in our cash flow. Let's go ahead and pay this sucker off. And I'm going to do this. So now it's going to be 6372.47. Copy and paste, and then we'll blam 43 months. 43 months. Okay, so now it's 43 months. And then it's 197 plus 45, and then it's 242K. All right, so now 43 months, what's the balance? This is 0, and then now we got to pay off the mortgage. Now, do we put the entire mortgage into the line of credit? No, because you have to take into account the interest rate and also how much cash flow you're getting. So if you're moving this $200,000 loan into an 8% line and you're only getting $927 of cash flow back, you're probably not saving that much money. Or you could use something called chunking, which is more efficient than just throwing your entire loan into the line of credit. Okay. People, for some reason, the velocity banking space really want to believe that you can throw a 2% mortgage into an 8% line of credit and save money, but you're really not going to save that much money. You might as well just make direct overpayments if you're going to do that. All right. So let me go ahead and open velocity banking calculator. Give me one moment. All right, so here's the velocity banking calculator. I just typed in the numbers, and if you want to know where I got this calculator from, I got it from Renatus. So if you don't know what Renatus is, it's basically the online educational company where I got this all from. And if you're interested in not only learning about velocity banking, but some other stuff like real estate investing, financial literacy, click the Google form link below, and yeah, other than that, I'll just end there. So here we see this, and here's the difference. So we just put in the details, and then if we just see this, so instead of so what do I mean by chunking? Is that, let's say you have $10,000, right, and you just simply move $10,000 from the line of credit into the loan. So I'll just do this plus 10000, right? You see that in the 2 months, the $10,000 gets paid down, right, by your cash flow, and then you just kind of rinse and repeat over and over again, another 10,000, and then rinse and repeat. And this one got paid off in 1 month, and then you just kind of rinse and repeat over and over again. And so once you do that, that's more efficient than, let's say, putting the entire loan into the line of credit. Because take a look at this, 22 grand of interest versus 8 grand, even though 22 grand, to be honest, in this case, and 2.6 years, like, relatively, it's not bad. It's better than the average American, but why throw away money on the table when you don't have to? Okay, 8,000. So let's go ahead and do this and take a look at what we've done here. So this is 0, and yeah, so 220 plus 242, that's how much was that? 43 plus 2.5, so 43 divided by 12 plus 2.5, 6.08 years. So 6.08 years. And what was it? Shoot, I screwed up. 220 plus 242, 462K. So almost a half a million, debt free. Okay, debt free. And so, yeah. I mean, throughout our journey, we just had 0 in our checking and savings, right? Every single month, you look at my checking and savings, it's pretty much a 0. Now, here's the funny thing, in many ways, the banker is right because if I was looking at someone's checking and savings and I saw a 0, and I know just from, a traditional perspective that most people are not doing this, I actually would have a heart attack unless they told me exactly what they were doing. You know what I mean? Um, but if it's me because I'm special, right? Quote, I'm special. Um, I know that I'm confident in what I'm doing because I've been doing this for I won't say quite some time, but it's really easy for me. Actually, I've only been doing this for like what since 2022, 21. I don't even remember. Yeah, probably 2021. But yeah, so here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. Now that you've gotten to this end of the video, some of you have already caught on that I like to have comments, not all the time, that I like you for you to write in the channel or in this video, so I know you watched the end of the video. But so here's the phrase or the comment that I want you to put here, um, in the comment box in the YouTube video, so that I know you watch. Right. So what's the comment? My banker thinks I'm crazy, but I'm actually winning. Okay, that's the comment of the day. My banker thinks I'm crazy, but I'm actually winning. All right. And don't worry, eventually you will find a banker who understands what you're doing and that you're in a good financial position. I mean, me personally, I actually in 2 years got what 400, $500,000 in equity in real estate with just two properties. So isn't that wealth, right? At least it's not, my money isn't just sitting in a checking account because my banker thinks I'm crazy, but I'm actually winning. All right. So this is Korean Atlanta Mentorship. Have a great day, everybody. Your banker does not know this. And our channel is growing. It will almost be 5,000 soon, and then 10,000, and then number one. And I'll be like, I don't know if you remember the presidential candidate Howard Dean in 2004, where he was like, "We're gonna go to all these states," and then he was like, "Yeehaw!" I'm probably gonna do that and then drop out of the race, figuratively, because that's what happened to him. You should look that up if you don't know what I'm talking about. But Howard Dean, Howard Dean. All right, have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you all in the next video. This is Korean Atlanta Mentorship.